the agenda. Because we don't have a quorum, we're going to flip some items. Our action item 6A is going to move to the rear of the order. So we're going to move 6B up to the front slot and 6C second. And so we will proceed with that until we get a quorum and Mayor Venus joins us later in the meeting. That's the adjustments I have. Does anyone else have any adjustments to the agenda from the membership? Seeing none, let's move on. Do we have any comments from the audience? Do we have anybody online, Paul, that's waiting to tap in for comments?
Chair, I do, and there is a guest with the first name of Sue who has raised their hand. I'm going to promote that person to panelist here, and if they agree to that, they should be able to join us both audio and visual in just a moment, and I believe they would like to speak.
I think in the order of time, even if she's speaking upon the matter that we're deciding on, the matter of 6A, let's go ahead and have her do that so we don't have to have her unnecessarily wait for the other two items we're going to do beforehand. So if that works for everyone, that's what we'd like to do. So let's go ahead and promote her as a panelist and see what she's got to say.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Sue, thank you for joining us. Go ahead.
So hi, I'm Sue Walling from Eugene, and I'll admit that in the wake of an election that's sending shockwaves around the world, it seems a little bit lame to be talking about one hypothetical road project in Eugene. Nonetheless, I'd like to put in a plug for money to advance safety improvements on 30th Avenue. Even if you've only experienced 30th from behind the wheel of a car, you know that it's a dangerous road in which you leave I-5, continue driving at highway speeds right up until you might encounter kids running across the road to get to school. Or maybe you slide into a ditch because you were surprised by some black ice. What you might not appreciate is how dangerous it also is for the surprising number of people who ride bikes to get to on 30th to get to and from LCC. I did that myself for 2 years while I was taking Spanish classes out there. And more people are likely to be riding bikes to reach the mountain biking trails that are being developed at Suzanne Arley Park. And who knows, maybe there'll end up being a big pickleball complex out there too. Right now, it's a dangerous road for everybody. But fortunately, there are some practical ways to make it safer. A lot of these ideas stem from the large number of people who showed up for public input sessions about 30th Avenue a year or two ago. Now we have an opportunity to flesh out those ideas. Safety isn't an accident. It takes planning and design, and it's time to do that planning for a safer 30th Avenue. So I hope you approve the funding for more planning on 30th. Thanks.
Thank you, Sue, for your comments. Appreciate that very much. Paul, is there anyone else that's slated with a virtual hand up?
Chair, at this time, I don't see anybody else that's not staff or membership. And for the record, Mayor Van Gordon has joined us, so you do have a quorum.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll still proceed with the adjustments to the agenda to make way for Mayor Venus. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak before we close this portion of the meeting? Councilor Groves, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, it took a second to unmute. 5 or 6 tries. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to share a little bit of information regarding Peace Health Rides, the bike share system that's in Eugene and Springfield. We just achieved our 1 millionth trip mile since the program began on October 23rd. And I also wanted to mention that the month of October was the highest month of trips since the program began, and that included 36,087 trips since the bike share program began. So obviously it's filling a niche that we hadn't filled before, and I just wanted to call attention to that. Thank you.
Councilor Groves, that's some serious data there. Is that for 1 million miles for the first year that it was in, or is that just since this past October? I was a little confused there. Sorry, since this past October, and I believe that's since the inception of the program. But it's still a lot. I mean, it's still a significant milestone. Yeah, what is that? A couple of trips to the moon and back on a bicycle? That's really great. Good job, Eugene. Thanks for passing that on. That's really good news.
Yes, but we have gravity down here.
Yeah, good thing, right? Make those miles a little easier, I guess. So that means that we have a quorum. Thank you, Mayor Van Gordon, for joining us. Let's go ahead and proceed. I'm looking for a motion on approval of the minutes. Anyone got a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the October 3rd minutes of our meetings.
Second.
Thank you, Counselor Mo. Thanks for the second. We have a first and a second to the minutes for the last meeting. All those in favor signify with the hand raise or an aye. Awesome. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Let's move along then. Let's move to our item 6B. It's our Regional Transportation Plan Travel Barriers and Benefits Survey monthly update, which we're excited to hear about because that's an ongoing process for us to really hone in what our priorities are and what our barriers are to the safety. It's going to be a presentation that has our regional travel barriers and our benefits survey there. So it's a little bit different than what we had last meeting. And Kelly Clark, she's already has that to bring to us. Kelly, welcome to the meeting. Again, thank you for your effort. And I'm looking forward to some awesomely graphically appealing slides.
I think you'll get them. Thank you, Chair.
Awesome.
Yeah, so one of the regional transportation plans, public engagement strategies is a regional travel barriers and benefits survey. So DHM Research conducted this survey this past September and is here to share its findings. And this is actually the third such survey DHM has conducted within our region. And so they'll be able to share also some emerging trends that we're starting to see as we've done this every 4 or so years. And with that, I wanted to hand over the presentation to Tony and Lane and let them introduce themselves and then take us through this presentation.
Thank you, Kelly. My name's Tony Iacarino. I'm a research manager at DHM. I'm joined by Lane Cooper, a research associate, also at DHM. We, as you may know, DHM Research is a nonpartisan, public opinion, policy-oriented research firm. We're based in Portland, Oregon. We have an office in Seattle. We've been doing opinion research for 40 plus years in the Pacific Northwest. And as Kelly pointed out, we had the good fortune of conducting a similar survey in 2014 and 2020. So I think we've got about half an hour. My goal is to, get through the deck within about 20 minutes, but please don't hesitate to interrupt me and ask questions if you'd like. And then we'll definitely have about 10 more minutes in addition for some Q&A. So you guys ready? Okay, I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay. Okay, can you all see that? Okay, great. Okay, so the purpose of the research, well, first I should say this is all part of the public engagement aspects necessary for the regional transportation plan. So this is one component of it. The purpose of the survey itself was to get a sense of transportation priorities in the Central Lane MPO, identify the most common travel modes and behaviors, factors motivating residents to use transportation alternatives, and then to compare findings over time. We employed what's called a hybrid mixed mode survey methodology. Hybrid has nothing to do with vehicles. It means that half of the 500 residents in the area that we connected with, we connected via phone and they spoke to a live interviewer. Half received a text inviting them to participate in a survey online. We do that nowadays. It's becoming emerging best practice in the field, in part because harder and harder to reach people by phone. And we want to use a variety of modes for reaching people where they're at. This was conducted in early September. We set quotas to make sure that the folks we were talking to, we had a representative sample based, according to age, gender, area, race, income, and a party affiliation. And the survey results here you see here have a margin of error of plus or minus 4%, 4.4%. I should add there's a lot more detail when it comes to area differences and demographic differences that are in the full report. But we just, don't have the time here to go over all of those slides. So what you're seeing is a much more abridged version of the full report. This gives you just basically a quick snapshot of the, who we spoke with in the Central Lane, area. And as you see, especially in that box in the bottom right corner, when it comes to area, this is a sample that is representative of the population of the region, not just by area, but also by age, gender, party, race, income, etc. A word or two about margin of error. I don't want to get bogged down on in this. We don't want to get into statistics, and we could have a long conversation about all of this that would last way more than 30 minutes. But essentially, I just wanted to point out that really what you need to know is that margin of error, helps us measure the accuracy of results. And with a sample size of 500, which is what we had, the margin of error is pretty good. It's plus or minus 4.4%. What does that actually mean? It means that if we do a survey of 500 adults in the area, and we find that, say, 50% respond in a particular way to a hypothetical result, we can say with extreme confidence that 50% finding is within plus or minus 4.4% of what we would achieve if we contacted every single resident in the region. So again, 500 is a robust sample size and gives you a relatively small margin of error. The smaller the sample size, obviously, the bigger the margin of error. Now, one other thing, when doing benchmarking, or in other words, comparing results over time, it's really important to take into consideration the combined margin of error from both surveys. So what does that mean? Say, for example, in 2020, you got a 50% result. In 2024, a 44% result. Well, you say, wow, there's 6% difference there. That must be like a significant change. Well, it's important to remember you have to take into consideration the margin of error range in 2020 and the margin of error range in 2024. And if those margin of error ranges overlap a bit, as they do here, it's less likely that that's a significant difference. Differences would sort of need to be outside of those margin ranges and not overlapping for us to be more confident that those differences are indeed significant. Now, we can get into complicated statistics, but it's just safe to say that even if differences are within those margin ranges, if we generally see directional changes in one direction or another direction, like over time, consistently, it's probably indicative of something or suggestive of something, even if it's not statistically significant. All right. So with that methodology behind us, let's get into some of the findings. So the first thing we did in the survey was to ask a very open-ended question which was, thinking specifically about transportation in the area, what are the most important transportation issues you'd like your local government leaders to do something about? And again, we did not provide response categories here. We just let people talk. Then we took those hundreds of verbatim responses and sort of coded them into different categories so we could present them quantitatively. And as you can see, improving road conditions, improving traffic congestion, and expanding bus transportation were the things that popped. Anything that's in the teens or above, when you ask an open-ended question in terms of the percentage of times it was mentioned, is pretty significant. Notably, like improving roads, improving road conditions has increased as a priority since 2020, while expanding bus service has actually decreased as a priority since 2020. The second highest priority, which is not here, improving traffic congestion, has remained pretty consistent since 2020. Okay, so high level, one of the things we did was to try to get a basic sense of how frequently residents in the area use various modes of transportation. Driving alone, as you can see in that set of columns to the left, continues to be the most frequent mode of transportation, perhaps not surprisingly, along with driving with others. And then, with walking as a distant third. Should point out, and these are probably not results that, you're excited about, but driving alone has increased since 2014, from 74% to 85%. Probably not the result you wanted to see, but that's what we found. Now, when it comes to choosing alternatives to driving alone, we asked folks, what influences you the most? And here we provided a set of response categories. These were not open-ended questions. And the top three really, in terms of thinking about what motivates people to use alternatives to driving alone: difficulty parking, challenges parking, higher gas prices, which certainly we've seen recently, as well as, interestingly, information about health or environmental benefits there. So certainly a communications opportunity, especially in that third bar. So we wanted to dig deeper into behaviors when it comes to alternatives to driving alone. And so the first area we explored was walking. Now, one question we asked was, when walking for transportation, not for recreation or exercise, but what types of places do you go most frequently? Shopping, eating out seems to be the things that, people do most of the time when they're walking. When it comes to non-recreational activities. This is a slide I think that is very interesting. Notably, 40% of residents who walk infrequently, now we're talking about people who walk monthly or less often, say they'd like to walk more. Now that number has declined a bit since 2020, but it's still at 40%. And this is a finding that we're going to see repeated over and over again in the survey when it comes to alternatives to driving alone. And I'd say that with 4 in 10 infrequent walkers saying they'd like to walk more, you do seem to have a captive and willing audience. People who seem interested, motivated, and want to engage in this alternative way of getting around. When it comes to what people say would motivate them to walk more, again, these are responses that we provided with them that they had an opportunity to select. Proximity of services, connected sidewalks, traffic safety are really strong motivators. Okay, so that was walking. I want to shift now to biking. Another alternative travel behavior we explored in more detail. And again, there's more detail in the full report, but we're just providing a broad overview here. Again, for those who bike as their primary mode of transportation, and we're not talking about sort of for fun, but sort of more non-recreational purposes, work is the most common destination. So you've got, a lot of people, who bike as their primary mode of transportation. It's really getting to work that most matters to them and what they're doing. Another interesting finding for those who bike as their primary mode of transportation, about 20%, 22% are also riding to and from public transportation. So suggesting here that, that having bike parking at public transit stops, making sure buses make it easy for passengers to accommodate their bikes seems fairly important. Now, for those who bike monthly or more often, we're talking about people who are more frequent bike riders. Health is the main reason they say they do so. Followed by a number of other factors, but not nearly as important as health. It's enjoyable. It's a way to save money. It's convenient. It's good for the environment. Here too, now think back about those infrequent walkers. Now we're looking at infrequent bikers. About 1 in 3, 35%, say they would like to do so more frequently. Again, a little drop from 2020, but nevertheless, a number that is still quite high. So again, both with walking and with biking, for those who engage in those kinds of, in that kind of travel infrequently, it seems like there's demand there for more of that. What would motivate you to bike more often? A whole host of factors. More connected bike lanes or paths, quality bike parking, proximity of stores and services, safety, more information about local bike routes, access to an electric assist bike. But again, those top two, bike lanes, quality bike parking, seem to be the strongest drivers. Moving along to bus ridership. Here too, shopping and work, most frequent destinations. And again, among those who ride the bus infrequently, so monthly or less often, you've got 24% who say they'd like to do it more frequently. Again, a little drop from 2020, but again, a captive audience here for those who would like to do more of that. Again, we asked them similar question, you know, what would motivate you to ride the bus more frequently? Good connectivity to and from transit stops, that first bar. More frequent bus service, that second bar. Also, you know, still in the 80%, 70% desire to rely on buses, or if buses were on time more often, if there were a countywide bus service. So again, a whole host of reasons might motivate people to ride the bus more often. We also asked about a handful of other modes of transportation, or let's call them sort of somewhat alternative, some programs for alternative forms of transportation or non-internal combustion engine vehicles. And what we found is, you know, programs to make EVs more convenient, such as more EV charging stations, bike share programs, programs to try out electric assist bikes, programs to encourage the use of electric scooters, anywhere between 43% to 28% in that final set of bars shows you that there is still significant interest in these programs. Again, decline since 2020, but nevertheless, demand still seems to be high. Finally, we asked a few questions about telecommuting, in part to help us get some baseline data, which might come in handy in the future. We asked everyone, you know, how often do you telecommute for work or for school? And as you can see, 1 in 3, or 31%, telecommute to work or school at least 1 day a week, several days a week, or 5 days a week or more, with 12% telecommuting 5 days a week or more. What's interesting is telecommuters also seem to be more interested in engaging in transportation alternatives than non-telecommuters, perhaps because they have greater flexibility. But in any case, let's say, how remote work impacts transportation policymaking and planning is still a work in progress for lots of communities, but nevertheless, certainly interesting to monitor as we move into the future. So that's really all I've got for you. I'm more than happy to entertain any questions.
Great, thank you, Tony. Great slides, by the way. Whoever does your graphics, kudos to them.
Thank you.
Is that you, Mr. Cooper? You do the graphics?
On this particular report, yes, I did. So thank you.
Well, good job. You were nodding and smiling, so good job, sir. Appreciate that. Anyone have any comments or questions for these guys here today on this survey? It's pretty thorough. Sounds to me like Tony did a good job. Thanks for the presentation. Sure. Anybody? I've got a few questions if nobody else has any. Oh yeah, Kelly, go ahead. You're unmuted, Kelly, so unmute and we can hear you.
Sorry about that. I just made a note in the chat for everybody with regard to the bus ridership piece.
Yeah, thank you for making that note. I did see that the ridership numbers line up with LTD's numbers as well. And you'll probably share some of that coming up in the later report we have at the end of the meeting, I hope. Yeah, right. Good. All right, Mayor Van Gordon, you got your hand up. Go, sir.
Well, that was a great report. and I really appreciate all the information about it. The two questions that I had, I guess maybe one question and one comment, is given that this is based on 2020 and all the, I don't know, let's just say challenges of 2020, should we really be relying on 2020 as a baseline to understand policymaking going forward, or should we just sort of take it kind of with a grain of salt?
Well, let me clarify. So we did 3 surveys,
Right.
2014, 2020, and 2024. So is the question, I wanted to make sure the question was, the results that we presented, were really focused on 2024. But
Yes.
some of the slides had sort of older data.
Correct.
Yeah.
But some of them were sort of comparing to where people were in 2020 and thinking about it that way. And, I guess I'm asking the sort of statistical question, how much weight should I be putting on the delta between what you had surveyed in 2020 and what you had surveyed in 2024, because 2020 was so challenging?
Yeah, I think, we talked a little bit about margin of error and how to understand changes over time, what is statistically significant and what isn't. Putting that question aside, I would say another challenge is that there probably does need to be an asterisk by 2020. I mean, 2020 was a very unique year. It really kicked off remote work. It no doubt affected transportation and travel behavior. So we would suggest exercising some caution when comparing 2024 data to 2020 data. Nevertheless, even if you were to look at the 2024 data by itself, there's just a ton of great information in there to inform. Yeah.
So just use a little
RTP.
bit, but you're not saying just completely ignore it. Second question that I had, I'll thank you for putting the telecommuter slide in. In my day job, I've telecommuted for at least 12 years now. So I'm glad that we're finally getting some, attention from a transportation perspective. So I guess that's more a comment than it is, a question. But having the telecommuter slide in there, I was really glad to say that, because that is a real transportation option to pull.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I had, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. Anyone else got any more comments or questions for Tony? Tony, I did notice something. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
No, Chair, please go first.
I did notice something on your telecommuting slide I thought was kind of interesting, and I hope I misinterpreted that. 34% of the people said they don't know if they telecommute. I was wondering what that was about. Do they need a job or something, or what are we saying here?
Do they know what telecommute means?
Yeah.
Part of that, part of that is people not knowing what it means, surprisingly. I will say there was a slight flaw in the way that question was fielded, because we did not realize until after 100 people had been surveyed that zero days a week, I believe, or 0 days a week or no days a week was not included as an option. So for 20% of the respondents, they didn't find the response category that they were looking for. And that was a flaw that we corrected after the first night of fielding once we spotted it.
Well, good catch. Councilor Groves, you have your hand up, sir.
I do. Thank you, Chair. Tony, do you have this broken down by community as well to help with some of our local decisions that we make with city funds? I think that that would be useful for my colleagues to see.
Yes, absolutely. We've broken things down by area and also by demographic group. A little something about area, which we explain in the full report. Given that the sample, the areas that you're able to compare meaningfully, where the sample sizes are sufficiently robust, is basically Eugene versus Springfield. The rest of the population, the rest of the MPO population outside of those two cities is about 5%. And that's just not a big enough of a sample size to do anything really meaningful with, for comparative purposes. But we do have a lot of findings in which we show some differences between Springfield and Eugene. And I have a handful of them, which I can share with you. If you want to just dig into the full report, you can do that.
Okay, thank you. And again, it's not that our partner city is any less important. It's just wanting to know what our constituents are feeling is important, and again, how we direct local funding.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Counselor. And for the record, Mayor Venus has now joined us, and she has a question. I might add that office is stunning. Never blur the background in that new office building of yours. Thank you for joining us. Mayor Venus, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I apologize, I'm late and I didn't hear the whole report, but I had this question or thought. I know we have someone from LTD here. Dave Roth is here. LTD just did a big kind of a rollout of their Connect 2040, and they're doing a lot of outreach on that and talking about mobility. And I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity for LTD maybe to sort of present some of that work to this group. It's so relevant to this report. And so Tony, you may have addressed that. I know we have LTD on the agenda later today, but I just wanted to sort of plant that seed that they're also doing this work very specifically with their role in the community. And I'd like us to connect the dots.
Yeah, Dave, do you want to take it, or otherwise I can speak to that?
Yeah, you guys go.
So yeah, I mean, we are going to talk a little bit about some of the near term actions that LTD is doing in the annual impact report as part of my presentation. We also just finished up a system review, which is something that occurs usually every 3 to 4 years, but it is really looking at trends with transit use and making adjustments to the transit system as we based on feedback from the public and from data trends. So I'll discuss that more in my presentation here in a minute. But yeah, we are kicking off our long-range mobility plan update that is spans out to 2045, Connect 2045. And so we'll be utilizing probably this report will be definitely considered. That was just presented, but also we'll be looking at our comprehensive operations analysis, the system review, as a baseline for what's happening today, and then projecting out into the future with significant public engagement and outreach to determine what folks want the transit system to look like in 20 years. So we're definitely working to connect all those dots.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Any other thing you got to add, Mary?
No, I look forward to that opportunity to see those things come forward for this committee, because they're just so tightly related, and there's a lot of community outreach involved, and it is the challenge, right, of bus ridership going down, and how do we look at mobility more broadly, which is great language that LTD is using, I think. So I just appreciate making sure that this body is talking about both of those things and seeing that work.
Good, good comment. Paul, you have your hand up, sir.
Thank you, Chair. If you don't mind me asking a question or two. And I apologize, I know that this was presented to the staff group, but I was not able to make that meeting. So I'm curious on slide 11, where the driving alone remains the most frequent mode of transportation and indeed has increased from 14 to 2024 by 11%. I don't recall that we had any questions that really tried to understand why that's happening. We have questions that say, you know, if you walk, what would get you to walk more, or you know, what are you doing when you're walking, etc. But do you have any insight into why we're continuing to see drive alone significantly increase? And if not from this survey, are there ways to ask that the next time we do the survey, or to get at that?
Yeah, well, I can't say I have insights as to why we've seen an increase in driving alone. I will say we certainly could have asked, and I think it would be a good idea to ask in the future, you know, why are you driving alone? I mean, most of the questions we ask are about why you are, you know, what would motivate you to use alternatives. But we don't directly ask the question, why are you using the mode, which I'm assuming a lot of policymakers are trying to kind of disincentivize or not promote. So it's certainly something we could do in the future.
And then, thank you. I just want to note that I know we hopefully plan on doing this again in the future. So I just want to put a very early plug in for that sort of question. Second thing is a little bit more technical on the statistical side, which is, I know you explained and I understand the margin of error with the sample size of 500. Within the sample size of 500, we have questions that are asked of the subgroup, where according to your slide, the number of responses gets as low as 28 or sometimes 150 or something. Are those still statistically significant given they're a subset of the 500, or?
Yes, so as the sample size diminishes, the margin of error increases. So and so, you know, each measurement requires some statistical analysis. We do have, and we will share, the crosstab results that provide a detailed demographic breakdown and area breakdown. And in those crosstabs, statistical significances are noted or called out, even when the sample sizes are much smaller. And we did our best in the full report to highlight areas where there were significant statistical differences between groups, and we note that. But there are, anyone on this team, if they wanted to, could take a deeper dive into the cross tables, which is like a 100-page Word document, and just flip through question by question. And once you see this little code next to some finding, it's like, oh, that's statistically significant. So, but again, we tried to highlight most of those in the report.
Awesome. Paul, y'all good?
I am. Thank you, Chair.
All right, good. I know we're running short on time. I've got a few questions of my own, Tony, that if you don't mind me asking. I know when I get a survey and it tells me, do I have time to fill out a survey? The answer is always no. But the survey that I decided to fill out the other day, it said this will only take 2 minutes of your time. And I thought, okay, 2 minutes is good. You'd mentioned this survey was 20 minutes long. Is that a barrier, do you think, sometimes for people to even get engaged?
Yeah. It is. We typically don't recommend I think in the end, I'm trying to remember how long this took. It was 20 minutes. Yeah, it did take 20 minutes to complete. Now, we don't recommend more than 15 minutes because you do start to lose people. We were balancing that imperative with the desire to, maintain benchmarking and, keep the survey as close to what it was in the past. So we didn't want to drop questions. I will say on the flip side, for the 250 people who talked to a live interviewer, yeah, it took about 20 minutes. For the 250 who received a text to online version, you can get through those way faster. So the length was likely not a barrier to those who received it online.
Well, great.
I'll
Thank
say
you.
too.
On a couple of your slides, I noticed something that may tie together. It may not. You mentioned about expanding bus participation. And then I noticed that the biking was down. Even if you lumped in the e-bikes, that was still going down. But I think the thing that also kind of tied those three together for me was the cost of driving. So in my mind, I'm thinking, if the cost of driving is driven up to a point where people just don't want to afford it, and offsetting that is the cost of public transportation, i.e. maybe getting subsidized to the point where it's free, would that then shift the trends to get more people into public transportation than auto? That was just my thought. You have any thoughts on that?
I don't know if I have a simple answer to that question. It's a complicated question. I will say that one of the distinguishing findings, Eugene versus Springfield, is you have more Eugene residents saying that free or reduced transit passes would be a motivator to ride the bus more often. I think that the numbers are high both in Springfield and Eugene, but I think they're significantly higher in Eugene. So that's our very, very narrow and partial answer to your question. I hope it gives you something to chew on.
Oh yeah, we always chew on something. Well, if there's any more questions or comments, we pretty much got our time limit on this one. Again, gentlemen, thank you for your time and effort, and enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for the data. Keep going. This is not an action item. It's just one that we're going to continue to have monthly updates on as we build our report. So again, thank you for your presentation. Good job.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's move on to our item 6C, our MPO Consortium, our OMPOC Legislative Priorities presentation. This is a presentation that the combined metropolitan policy organizations in the state find where they have common ground and common issues. And Kelly is leading this. It's kind of the Kelly show again today. So Kelly, you're doing a great job today. Appreciate you. And go ahead and take that away and let us know what we need to know.
All right, thank you. So as a reminder, OMPOC is a statewide forum. Members are elected officials representing the state's 8 MPOs. And it's a forum for the MPOs to work collaboratively and collectively on transportation issues that are of statewide significance to us all. And one of the ways that OMPOC collaborates on this is on advocacy at the state and federal levels during the legislative sessions. And so for the upcoming 2025 legislative session, OMPOC has collaborated with the League of Oregon Cities in preparing its legislative priorities. And the intent is really to demonstrate collective support across all the state on these top statewide needs and priorities in order to strengthen their momentum through the session. The priorities are also reflective of longstanding OMPOC priorities. And they're listed in your packet. And I was going to share them on my screen as well, if I can. Here. It always takes me a minute to do this, sorry. This should be it. Okay. Are you able to see the PDF on my screen?
You got it. Good job. Yep.
Great. Okay, so the high level kind of priorities that OMPOC has decided on and that we're presenting to each of the boards, and then we'll bring it back to the next meeting, are support for core operations and maintenance, transportation safety, diversification and indexing a full range of transportation revenue sources, additional transit funding, and then finishing the projects in House Bill 2017. And I won't read all of the summaries to you because no one wants that. But again, these are the high level priorities. If each of the OMPOC MPO members boards support their members as part of OMPOC and advocating for these categories, this is what OMPOC will take to the legislative session. And in the past, the OMPOC chair or his members have advocated both in person or in writing to the legislature as the time comes and is needed. And so what we're asking today is your feedback, comments, questions, and hopefully support for these priorities when we go to OMPOC the next meeting in late January, early February.
Okay, that pause tells me you're probably almost done.
Sorry.
Does that pause tell me you're almost done? Sorry,
I'm done. And unless anything, Paul or Councillor Moe or Board Member Cox would like to add.
I'm the representative on that from MPC. It's very enlightening to see different views throughout the state for issues that we are also dealing with. And most of them are pretty common throughout the city. Some of them are different. We're not all the same. And I've really enjoyed listening to other views of their solutions or potential solutions to what's going on. And that's been real helpful. And let's see, road user tax has been one I've been pushing, and fiber been another one. And these ones that are on this list here are very high on our priority list.
Yeah, thank you. Kelly, go ahead and add on.
I just wanted to express the LTD's support of the entire list, but also just calling out the additional transit funding is a really important piece for us, and we're appreciative of that.
Thank you.
Kelly, forgive me for my not knowing, but to me, we have projects that we haven't done since 2017. What's the real reasons behind that? Is that funding, or is that just availability or bureaucracy? What's going on with that?
Well, there's probably a lot of reasons for that, and maybe Paul would be better equipped to answer it, but I think funding is probably a big part of it. I will say one of the feedback that I've heard from another MPO is that that category is not maybe wide enough in its scope, and it should be finished projects in House Bill 2017 and of statewide significance. Because I think it's the Interstate Bridge and I-5 corridor are not explicitly funded from House Bill 2017, and so it's kind of expanding on that category just a little bit.
Chair, I can add that I can add that it really is the funding, and what happened in House Bill 2017 for those projects that were originally funded out of that historic legislation is that many of them were underfunded on purpose. In other words, the legislature provided funding out of that package that was only supposed to be part of the funding, assuming that ODOT would be able to round up other funding to make those projects whole. And then the second thing that happened is that, as I'm sure you all understand, the costs of those projects have increased. And so for those two reasons, a lot of those projects have not reached full funding and have not been able to proceed.
And every day it gets us wider and wider. Yeah. All right. Well, good. Thank you for that insight. I appreciate that very much. Is there any other comments about this item for Kelly or for the good of the order? So basically, I think what this item is looking for is head nods from the rest of us about proceeding forward with these 5 priorities. Everybody kind of indicate with a thumbs up. Are we all good with that? And Nancy, I noticed Mayor Coburg, you got your hand up too. So go ahead. Oh, you're voting. Oh, I see. Okay, good deal. Thank you.
No,
Okay.
I do have a question.
Oh, go ahead,
I'm
please.
sorry. I'm a little slow. I got here a little late and I'm just a little behind. But I was, it may be a silly question, but I have to ask. Under the diversity and index for revenue sources, county registration fee at the cap. Tell me what cap is. Is it as much as we can get, or?
I will quickly answer that, although I don't know if the county staff want to weigh in, but I don't recall the number off the top of my head, Mayor, but yes, there is currently a legislated cap on how much the counties can charge for local registration or county registration fees, and we'd like to see that increase or.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Kelly, looks like we got head nods to proceed with that. So appreciate that presentation. And Mayor, I do notice that Mayor Van Gordon has dropped off. Do we still have a quorum to move on to item 6A?
Yes, we do. Mayor Bell joined us, and that still leaves us at 6 members present, or more, 6 or more. Okay, good deal. Thank you for checking it out. All right, well, let's move on to our project proposals for the redistribution of funding for the surface transportation block grants. This is an item that's going to require us to have some action, also a public hearing. So I'd like to formally open the public hearing at this time. I know we've already had a public comment from Sue early in the meeting about this measure, and I'm wondering, Paul, if there's anyone else online that wants to give public comment. I'm just double checking right now, Chair, but I do not see anybody that, again, that's not either staff or members, and nobody raising their hand. So I believe that I want to just note that the earlier public comment should be considered part of the public hearing, but other than that, I don't see anybody else. Awesome. Awesome. Make that so. All right. Well, then I'd like to formally close the public hearing time and then ask for any input or discussions from our membership concerning this item. This is one of those rare things we get before Thanksgiving and Christmas where we actually have some spending money that we can put in somebody's sock. So this is your time to put forward what you think the good sock is. So I'll take it away. Anyone who wants to go ahead, jump in. Mr. Groves, Councilor Groves, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm always going to make an advocacy for seismic upgrades, whether it's planning for stabilizing and increasing the resiliency of our bridges and overpasses or whatever, because they're not in very good shape except for the new ones. And I know this is a drop in the bucket of what is needed for that, but there's also planning that needs to go in, and engineering. It might be able to help with some of that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? Paul, go ahead. Chair, could I just make sure that everybody's aware of and notice the email I sent out this morning, which has an update to what was originally in your packet as far as the current proposal. And Dan Collister is here to speak to that if you would like a short presentation. Yes, please. Dan, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. My name is Daniel Collister, Senior Planner at the Lane Council of Governments. And as you know, this is regarding the proposed uses of the federal redistribution funding that has come to Central Lane MPO to use for eligible projects at the MPO's discretion. So some background on this, each state needs to obligate 100% of its federal transportation funding every year. And states that fail to do that have the unobligated balance of those funds returned to be redistributed to the states that did. And ODOT is really good every year, obligating 100%. The three large MPOs in Oregon, that's ourselves and the MPOs in Salem and in Portland, we have an agreement with ODOT that as long as we're maintaining our own MPO's obligation rate at a 3-year rolling average of at least 80%, we're entitled to a share of that redistribution that comes to Oregon. So our share this time is just over $1 million. The catch with redistribution funding is that it needs to be obligated quickly. And that means that project contracts have to be finalized, signed, so that the federal funding can be officially committed to that project. And we need a notice to proceed and reimbursable work can begin. That process usually takes several months. Because of that, we're looking at not looking at selecting new projects. for these funds. Instead, we're looking at existing projects that already have MPC support, that are already in the improvement program, already demonstrate support of the regional goals and performance targets. And we're looking to see which of those projects could put these funds to use, particularly where there are budget overruns or committed local funds beyond the federal match requirements. So this has resulted in the 3 funding requests, which together would utilize the full balance of the redistribution. The meeting packet includes a summary sheet for each of those 3 requests. I'm just really quickly going to describe those. There's City of Eugene Chambers Street Seismic Bridge Retrofit Project requesting $549,387. Those funds would replace local funds. Those local funds would then return to the city. Lane County 30th Avenue Active Transportation Corridor Design Project. Lane County is requesting $250,000. Those additional funds will be used to advance the design concept through preliminary engineering. We heard from Sue, a member of the public, earlier in this meeting who offered her input. We appreciate that. Sue, if you're still here, thank you for taking the time to weigh in. And the third request was from the city of Springfield for $250,000 for the Big Franklin Boulevard project. Partnership to Rebuild and Revive a Corridor is the name of that project. These funds would replace the local overmatch funds for the roundabout portion of that project at the Mississippi Avenue intersection. Again, those are local funds that would return to the city. But more on that request in just a moment. With consideration of the fact that these funds need to move quickly, MPC has approved a process where redistribution and other what we call off-cycle discretionary funds can be programmed in an expedited fashion, including a more streamlined public involvement while still meeting the federal requirements for due process. So Transportation Planning Committee in October reviewed these applications and they requested expedited approval of these funding requests. There were a handful of comments received from the public. Those were provided in a supplementary email this morning. You can read those full comments. Just briefly, I'll say that they're generally in favor of the proposals. There are sentiments both for and against the roundabouts, as well as praise for addressing safety issues. There was another comment that was received after the supplement was sent out, and since it's real short, I thought if it's okay, I'd just read it quickly now. It is signed Thomas H. Hoyt, and it reads, "Greetings, I reside at 29th Avenue, Eugene, and travel 30th Avenue from Hilliard Street to I-5 4 or 5 times a week at various times during the day and night. I've not encountered any traffic congestion or safety issues associated with congestion, bicycles, or pedestrians. There is no need for any additional improvements or changes. Please do not change the traffic patterns and flow on this corridor." As I mentioned, you can read the other comments in the materials that were emailed this morning. Now, I do need to explain a bit of a wrinkle that arose in this process, which is that after these proposals were published for public review and after TPC recommended approval, the city of Springfield, after consulting with Federal Highways, decided to withdraw their request. That's the $250,000 for the Franklin Boulevard roundabout at Mississippi Avenue. That is unfortunate. As I mentioned, these redistribution funds really need to be programmed fully and quickly to existing projects that can utilize them quickly. And unfortunately, Springfield had no other projects ready to use those funds as needed. City of Coburg and Lane Transit District had both declined to submit requests. So staff from the City of Eugene and Lane County were able to get their heads together and agreed on a revised funding proposal where Eugene's Chambers Street project would take and utilize the remaining $250,000 balance of redistribution. The city can use those funds because of the large amount of local overmatch on that project. So although the proposals have been altered, it is requested that we hold a public hearing. That has taken place, thank you. And formally close the public comment period. It's then requested that MPC approve resolution 2024-04 to approve the revised funding proposal as shown on page 2 of the revised cover memo, the one that is dated November 6th, which is $799,387 to Eugene's Chambers Street project and $250,000 to Lane County's 30th Avenue project. It was a mouthful, but with that being said, I'm happy to take any questions that the committee might have.
Any comments by anyone out there? Yeah, Councilor Moe, go ahead.
Okay.
You good?
The Mississippi Roundabout in Glenwood, there's a whole bunch of federal money committed to build that already, correct? It's already been designed. It's going to be built. This 250,000 should not affect that.
Absolutely. It's a question of whether the city's paying for that with local funds or if they're replacing those with federal funds and using the local funds for something else.
Okay, thank you. I'm only a city councilor. They don't tell us anything what's going on over there. Oh, yeah, thank you.
And that line of communication just goes upward, Steve. So there you go. Mayor Venice, go ahead.
Yeah, I thank you, Chair. I just wanted to appreciate this adjustment and you know, second the comments from Councilor Groves about how regionally important this spot is. It may be in Eugene, but it has huge significance for fire department is near there, public safety, having that safe that bridge upgraded to be seismically sound is, you know, going to be important to the entire metropolitan area. So just really appreciate the work that went into figuring out this adjustment of the allocation, and I support it.
Good, thank you. Anyone else?
Good.
Well, I, for one, want to just weigh in here as well. I like to use funds where they're going to do the most good. I think some of the things we do as a municipal bodies and all the things we do budgeting is we spread the butter too thin and don't move the needle far enough. And as Mayor Venice just described, this is a really critical bridge that has public safety and EMS duties that are assigned to it. And, you know, to lose that during a crisis would be an absolute crisis. So I'm in support of moving through that. And at this point, I'd ask for a motion on resolution 2024-04 if someone's got one.
I move. Go ahead, Mayor.
I move we approve resolution 2024-04.
Do I have a second? Looks like Councilor Moe's got his hand up for a second. Thank you. So we have a first and a second to approve resolution 2024-04, the revised funding version amending the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program and awarding the $250,000 to be added to the Chambers Seismic Bridge retrofit. I'll take a vote. All those in favor, please signify by an aye or a hand raise. Anyone opposed? Passes. Good deal. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dan, thanks for the presentation. You cleared it up very well. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, looks like we have shifted our agenda around and we are ready kind of for a break from the PowerPoint presentations for just a few minutes, but don't hold your breath. We have one more coming up. We're ready for the ODOT update, and I understand that VDAL is not here, and I'm looking for the right Hollywood Square box. And that would be Bill. There you go. All right, Bill, take it away for the update.
I'll be brief. I did speak with Vidal this morning. Again, he has a conflict today. Couldn't make this meeting. He apologized. He did not have any ODOT updates to share with the group today.
Great. Any questions on that? I can't imagine there would be, but thank you, Bill. Appreciate that very much. And for the TIP project report, we didn't have very much on that. Obviously, the Chamber Seismic Retrofit was one of them, as well as the 30th Avenue Bridge. Any questions upon this document that comes into your packet or on your email? All right. If not, let's move on to our final item of the day, the LTD Annual Impact Report for 23-24 and its system review. And I think, Sue, that's what you're going to be doing, or is that somebody else?
No, that'll be me, Chair.
That'll be Brandon. All right, Brandon, you got the stage and the microphone. Take it away, sir.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm Brandon Melton. I'm a senior development planner at LTD with a lengthy tenure. I started in August, so brand new to the organization, but I'm really excited to be here and came in at an exciting time. So we wanted to share a couple of documents that we've recently finished. You know, as Mayor Venice pointed out, we're trying to connect the dots here, and we want to share our value with the community and communicate that out. So first, I'll go through the annual impact report. Just a brief presentation here as, let me get that shared. But do you see it okay? Great. So just a brief presentation. It is a shorter document, but it's really the highlights from this year, again, to communicate the value that LTD is providing to Eugene and Springfield area and surrounding communities. Let's see if we can get the advance going. There we go. Vision values for LTD, always want to focus our work around those core ideas and ideals. So really just some overview, some really general numbers here. Our bus fleet's around 113. Our ridership, we talked about how important that is. We really had a sharp decline after COVID, but we continue to build back. So from 21 to 22, we were at 4.9, and now we're at our highest since COVID at 6.2 million. We also provide service to our students, our youth at 14,000 students. We service 255. We have, this is our employment. We have 255 folks in our service delivery department and 70 folks in our administrative office. The survey says 75% of folks in the community believe LTD provides value. That's pretty good, I'd say. I think that we want to do better, though, and this report is working towards that. Some of the highlighted projects and initiatives that we've taken on over the past year, we've been working to improve safety around our MX line and bus-only lanes. We've also, in an effort to better engage the community, we've gone through a process to develop a community engagement framework. We utilized a community steering council, which had representatives from business, riders, residents, and others to help develop a framework that helps guide all of our communication with the community and to help build that rapport. Some of you maybe have seen it. Downtown Eugene Station has undergone some modernization. We've improved wayfinding. We have new and improved restrooms and lighting. And our customer service center, it looks great. If you haven't been down there, I suggest you visit, but looks a lot nicer, a lot more accessible. And then also improving our fixed route services. So based on community outreach, we adopted short and long-term recommendations, and that's going to be, I'll talk about that more in the next presentation on our system review. Again, another critical component of LTD services are accessibility and paratransit. We've seen almost a million total miles of ADA paratransit service provided, and over 3 million for non-emergency medical transport. It's an area that LTD really strives to support is our healthcare and connection to healthcare. And then we have pretty good safety, 27,000 consecutive accident-free trips. And then, as we mentioned briefly, and it's kind of, there's some rumblings and stirrings going on, but the Connect 2045 is what we're calling our long-range mobility plan update. Our tagline, Mobility Solutions for a Connected Community. This will be the first update to our long-range mobility plan. And that should say 2014. I had 2045 on my mind when I wrote the slide, but since 2014, and 2014 was the first long-range transit plan, long-range mobility plan that LTD had created. So it's the first and only, and it's some things have happened since 2014, and so it's definitely time to give that a refresh. We were able to secure an ODOT TGM grant that a little over $200,000 to help us support that effort and to engage with a consultant to update the plan. And then we plan to do extensive public outreach, and we're going to utilize that community engagement framework that I mentioned earlier that was recently adopted this past summer. Where the document overall will help us prioritize investments, over the next 20 years. So look more for that. That project is just getting kicked off. We don't have a consultant selected at this time, but we're going to be getting much more into that project early next calendar year. So I will go ahead and switch over to another presentation on the system review. One moment. Center and share. Okay. Can we see that screen now? Perfect. All right. So as I mentioned, the system review has been an ongoing process where we look at a comprehensive, it's also known as a comprehensive operations analysis, and it's something that we look at every 3 or 4 years or so. There's not really a set time, but why are we doing this system review, or why did we do it? COVID-19 changed how people travel. I mean, that's sort of obvious, stating the obvious at this point, but really needed to look at, had a drastic shift in how folks were utilizing transit, and as we talked about in the survey, just all around in different modes. We've also experienced, again, pandemic related, but staffing shortages. It's been difficult to build back our operators and our maintenance staff. And so that's something we continue to work on. We also looked at, our service levels and the quantity and content of how we're about 90% of our pre-pandemic service levels. And so we want to work towards building that back. This was just I think this has been presented to this committee, so I won't go into too much detail, but the project kicked off last fall. We engaged, had some strategic engagement with the community at least 3 times throughout the process, where we and the consultant, Nelson Nygaard, worked through developing existing conditions, service improvements, and then ultimately service improvement recommendations. So final recommendations were developed. We looked at things like ridership and connections. We looked at travel patterns based on cell phone data, population and employment data, socioeconomic data, future growth projections, and also public input. And from that, we also established goals for recommended service changes to improve route frequency, to reduce route duplication, add weekend service, and extend service to higher density growth areas, being responsive to development in the area. And really develop 2 categories, so short-term and long-term recommendations. So the short-term are things we can implement in obviously the short term, but focusing on things that don't require additional resources, such as buses and operators or operating hours. There's a lack of operators, and that might delay some of those short-term recommendations, but we continue to reach out and develop that workforce. The long-term recommendations are those that will require additional service, but they reflect today's travel patterns. It's gonna, additional resources will be required, and we don't really know when those will be available. So we termed the long-term recommendations to be transparent about the time frame that folks can expect these recommendations to go into place, and it'll be a phased process. So really the short-term recommendations will stay at the highest level bullet point, since you've seen a lot of this before, but most route alignments didn't change. So it's a pretty straightforward set of changes. A lot of it is adding frequency. I think frequency is king in improving ridership, and really namely around MX and Route 11 on weekdays is one that at least in the MX has been implemented even today in our fall bid. And we went to 10-minute frequency, between 10 and 15 minutes, depending on the time of day. And that's a really great frequency to be at, because it means that folks really don't need to look so much at a schedule. They just can be confident that they can go to the station and catch a bus when they need to catch it. And so we're really excited that the MX is back to a 10-minute frequency. We also looked at increasing mid-morning trips on the 24, 36, 40, and 28. And I have some maps in this presentation too, to kind of visualize that if you're a more visual person. Creating high frequency corridors, 15-minute weekday service, that's a great frequency. Also, it's not a high, it's still considered high frequency. And again, it makes it a much more convenient for folks to make the choice to ride transit. And then making permanent reduction service, that's maybe the downside here is we did have a permanent reduction on routes 27, 73, and 78. Those were suspended due to during COVID. They were some of our lowest ridership routes, and so they were suspended. But this change makes that permanent. And so we did do some targeted outreach in those neighborhoods. Obviously, when there's a reduction in service, we want to make sure we're communicating with the folks that we're serving. And the stakeholders suggested that they would be interested in other future mobility management service solutions, maybe outside of fixed route transit. So here's that map. The green is frequent service, the blue is added service, and then yellow is modified. There's only one spot there, but then again, noting the removed services on the system. So you can see that the frequent service and added service are the majority of the changes being made. So moving in a positive direction there. And then we listed out here, I won't go through the entire list. I already mentioned the MX. We have some 30-minute service increases. We returned to 30 minutes. So again, building back from COVID service reductions on the 24, 28, 36, and 40, and 81. The one reduction we had was on 82, and that has to do with some dependencies on Route 81 changes. So that's just maybe the one reduction in frequency that we saw. And then again, routing changes were pretty minor. It was very much tweaking, and we can go into specific routes if you'd like to later in the presentation, but I won't list through them all, but really meant to make the system work more efficiently overall. And then, anytime we do make a change to this system, we want to make sure that we're considering Title VI impacts and implications. And really with most routes not having a change in alignment or span of service, and overall increasing service and frequency, that there weren't really any disparate impacts to disadvantaged communities. The long-term recommendations, these are going to be ones that require additional resources, improving frequency as operators become available, expanding the number of high-frequency corridors. The ones we're looking at most are West 18th, MLK and Centennial, and along Highway 99. We also want to see transit circulation improve in downtown Eugene. That's something we consistently work with the city on to make sure that the downtown transportation system is working for everyone. We improve service to rural routes. We continue to see demand for our rural routes, and we'll continue to improve those services as we can. We're also going to be exploring capital improvements that help the buses operate faster and more reliably. Then talk about mobility management. I think part of that is developing frameworks around what other flexible services that we can provide to access areas where it's not very practical for our larger vehicles to go. And there's another map for visual folks, but yeah, it looks great. Lots of green there, lots of green and blue. Added service, added frequent service. Some minimal reductions. On the 66, 67 line there to the north, but really overall good changes, positive changes. And then again, just laundry listed out here, but increasing to 15-minute service on the 13, 24, 28, 36, 41, and then increasing to 30 minutes on the 17 and 18. So yeah, we just lots of positive changes on that. We can go into specifics later. And again, with the routing changes. So yeah, I do have some route level recommendations slides if there's anything in particular that folks want to look at, or any other questions that you might have, I'll be happy to take a shot at it.
Great, thank you, Brendan. Appreciate that. Great photography, by the way, coming from a former photographer. Looks pretty good. You guys are doing great. Any questions for Brendan or anything? Seeing none. Brandon, I just have one question. Driving by Lazy Days the other day, coming back from Bend, I was wondering what LTD's frequency route to that is. I mean, obviously that's an affordable housing community that's taking shape right now, and I'm just kind of wondering, it feels a little far out, and I'm just wondering how those folks are going to access employment and that services and that sort of thing in the city.
Yeah. Dave, do you know what the frequency is on that line right now? Dave might have
looking it up right now. It's our Mackenzie Bridge.
Thanks, Dave.
It's our Mackenzie Bridge service, and Mackenzie Bridge.
It's Route 91, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, 91. Let's see. It really is just a peak service, so just mornings and the evenings on that one, and that's sort of the nature of most of our rural routes.
Okay. Answers my question. Good. Thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you again. Any other questions? I see Councilor Groves, your hand go up. Mary Venice, go ahead.
Yeah, just a question because it went by fast. You showed us two maps, the long-term service recommendations map, and then the earlier map was, what was the earlier map?
The short term.
Short term, that was the short term. So there are some removed services on the short-term map that then come back on the long-term map.
So we don't anticipate. We don't anticipate as of right now the 27, 73, those routes that are showing being removed. We don't anticipate those coming back as of right now. Those things can change, but I think there's, as demand as demand is communicated, then we can be responsive to that in different ways.
Okay, thank you. I just needed to see them side by side again one more time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilor Gross.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Brandon, for the presentation. On slide 3, you showed the different types of buses that you have. You don't need to pull it up, but I'm interested in knowing how are your electric buses working out? Are they performing as anticipated?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Are they performing as anticipated? I think electric buses, they yes and no. So yes, that they are performing well, in a technical sense, I think there are a lot of challenges with electric buses that we face because of reduction in battery life over time. So, when we're developing route schedules, we have to know how long we can have a bus on the road, and that varies based on the age or the health of the battery on the bus. So that does present a challenge for our schedulers. There's also, they are down more often and sometimes down longer when there's maintenance required because of the more advanced technology that's on the buses. It can be difficult to keep them in service. So there's been some challenges, but there are also benefits as well to electric buses. But that's what I know about it.
Looking forward, are you aware of any changes in the industry, in the manufacturing of electric buses to provide longer battery life?
I mean, the battery technology is advancing. Dave also can speak a little bit more to the electric buses.
I can step in. So the technology has definitely evolved. 30% of our fleet is electric right now, and as Brandon mentioned, we've had some technical issues with those buses. Right off the line, when we took delivery of those buses, we had a number of technical warranty issues where we had to have service on site with the manufacturer's technicians actually stationed here at LTD to make sure that those buses were operable. Brandon mentioned that the scheduling of those buses is a challenge. Even for the new buses, the battery life just doesn't provide all-day service, whereas a diesel bus can run all day without necessarily having to refuel. A battery electric bus can only run about 70% of the day. And so as you can imagine, we like to be able to use any bus for any route, but we might not be able to do that with electric, so it presents some challenges. And then to your question about the technology, certainly the technology is changing. In terms of battery electric, we're interested in thinking about from a resiliency perspective, if we ever do invest in more battery electric buses, will they have vehicle to grid technology where those buses could actually be turned into a source of power in an emergency situation? That would be a real big benefit, I think, for the region, beyond just mobility. Other technology that's on the horizon, I'm not sure if people here noticed, but TriMet was awarded some funding to go after hydrogen-powered buses recently, and that'll be the first hydrogen test in the state that I'm aware of anyway, on Southwest 82nd Avenue, I think is where they're gonna deploy those. We're not at a point where we're ready to make that jump. We want to sort of play it safe and take it slow and see how the technology pans out. I will say that all of our planned investments right now in vehicle replacements and buses are standard diesel buses. And in terms of sustainability, our diesel buses run on R99, very low emission fuel. And the biggest benefit that we can get from a sustainability perspective in terms of buses is to pack those buses with people and reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. So that's our biggest benefit that we can get, regardless of propulsion type. Thanks.
Well, thank you for the update. The MPC did get a tour of projects in the region, and we rode on an electric bus, and I found it very interesting, but I know there's some limitations. At the same time, I think it's great that TriMet is going to be testing some hydrogen fuel cells, and we can maybe learn some things from them. So thank you for looking forward.
Great, Dave. Thanks for that depth of answering that question too. I learned a bunch just hearing you say that. That was good. Appreciate that very much. Anybody else have any questions for Brandon or Dave while they're still on? All right. Again, gentlemen, thank you for the presentation. Thanks for all you do. Keep those buses packed and moving. Okay, so we're closing to the end of our meeting, and I'm wondering if any of the members have any comments or closing remarks or anything that they want to bring up that they didn't have a chance to do. If not, I want to remember that December. Oh, Paul, you were going to say probably about January 2nd or our next meetings. Is that what I'm hoping you're going to get into?
Yes, Chair, thank you.
Good deal. Go ahead.
Didn't mean to interrupt you, but I noted on the agenda a question mark about January 2nd. Obviously, that date may not be best for everybody's availability. I checked with staff earlier this week. We don't believe we have a time-sensitive need to meet that day, and so I'm planning tentatively to cancel that, and I just wanted to let you know ahead of time that we'll probably free up your holiday week there.
So you don't have to drive back over the pass per se. If you're skiing, you can wait another day. Good job. Well, you didn't have to do it anyway because we're on Zoom. Well, you know, everything's changed. Mayor Venice.
And just with that in mind, I will just, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to serve on this committee. I will be officially out of office by January 5th. And so I will miss your January meeting. This means this was probably my last meeting with all of you. And I just want to thank you all. I have learned a lot by serving on this committee. It's been very, very interesting to hear the conversations and just appreciate all the work that you all do to keep these investments moving forward and you know, sort of building the transportation system we need. So thank you all very much. Thanks to LCOG for your management of this and leadership, and to all of you for what you bring to the table. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. Paul, you want to add to that?
Well, I do, and expand a little bit. I want to thank the mayor. It's been great to have you on MPC all these years. You will be missed. And that leads me into another mention in that in January, another reason for canceling is that typically there is turnover with the members of MPC, and sometimes that month is necessary for your local bodies to reappoint new MPC members. However, we do plan at the December meeting to hold the elections for the OMPOC representatives for next calendar year. We have tentatively scheduled the next OMPOC meeting for January 31st. So that's another reason we'd like to have those elections at the December meeting. So for those of you who will be continuing on MPC, please consider whether you'd like to serve in that capacity, and we'll talk more about it next month.
All right, super. And Mayor Venice, I'd like to especially, I have not worked with you very long, but I've been a resident of here for 40 years, and your service to the community is exemplary in what you brought to the table. And like most of us who are in this position, we feel like we're always sucking on a fire hose and not knowing what we should know, but certainly your knowledge and wisdom and grace in handling all this stuff has been warmly appreciated by the community. And I am happy that you get to finally do something you want to do and you can shift chapters and gears. So good on you, and blessings on your trips and whatever you do forward from here.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, if that is it, Paul, you got your hand up one more time for something else?
No, just forgot to lower it.
Okay, sounds good. Brenda, you were going to say something?
I just wanted to say to Mayor Venice that we appreciate you.
Awesome. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, before I close, I want to sue the public commenter this afternoon, or this morning rather, when she started, said that she had mentioned that these are different times. And I thought I would just express this last quote to you all before you left. When things don't go your way, oftentimes yelling plot twist is what you do in the face of difficulty, because that prepares ordinary people for extraordinary destiny. So go be extraordinary today, and thank you very much for all your service to the community. This meeting's adjourned.